warm welcome. And we are going to do these CRE sustainability series on almost every Wednesday or at least every fortnight. So a big welcome, and please everyone do join us. We will regularly post it on all the social media possible, so you know it in advance. And it's really nice to see so many people attending. I want to request you all, after I introduce Judy, please, you will try to, during the talk, I'm not giving an answer, but try to find a connection with Judy and sustainability. Like you may wonder, why is CRE hosting a talk with somebody who is in the field of textile, which comes to introducing Judy. So in short, keep an eye on the connection between Judy's work and sustainability and the environment. I have a very, very huge task of introducing Judy. She wears so many hats and she's such an exceptional person. I don't know how to introduce her. She's been associated with, I should not call it the textile sector, but only in Kutch. That's what she's famous for. She's the founder director of one of India's first design schools. What is exceptional about Judy's work is she has redefined design itself. And I hope Judy's talk captures that. And you can, the difference is that I think by capturing that, that essence of what is design, we will change our entire education and kind of visit all our existing paradigms, because Judy strongly feels that we have lost critical thinking, we are no longer creative, we have lost all this, we just do skill and knowledge development in our schools and colleges, which is really sad. So we are looking for Judy's insights into education itself. And I know I'm digressing into education, but the most important thing is that Judy works with artisans and she believes in people and processes, which is just amazing. She doesn't believe in the product. She knows the product will come if the people and the processes are in place. So Judy, really, we are so completely happy that you are with us today, and we are looking forward to your insights in education and, of course, in the concept of design itself. So over to you, Judy. One thing, please, everyone, we leave the questions at the end so that Judy can go through her talk without major, kind of interruptions in the middle. Yes, thank you.
Okay, and yeah. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Katie. It's very exciting to be a part of CERE. And although my story is about a small corner of India, of Kutch, really it has bigger themes that I hope you'll see. And I'll give you a little hint about sustainability. I had already thought, well, there's two main connections between what I've been doing and what CERE does. The first is Ashoka. Both Katie and I are Ashoka fellows, and I hope what you'll see in my story today is how an Ashoka fellow, a social entrepreneur, is able to identify an issue and come up with systems to address that issue. That's one thing. The second connection is sustainability. And I think, we tend to think of environmental sustainability, but I think there's also a cultural aspect. Cultural sustainability is also very important. And there is an environmental sustainability part too. I think craft can teach us a lot about sustainability because it's about value. Ultimately, we preserve what we value. And what I have done with artisans and teaching design is all about value. So, and also respect. Ultimately, none of this would have happened without developing a bond of respect between myself and the artisans that I worked with. Okay, so I'll give you a little background first. Probably, I hope most of you know where Kutch is, but I do this talk outside of India too. So here's a map showing Kutch. And I think one thing to know about Kutch is that it's bordered by Rann on the north and the east, and by sea on the south and the west. So it becomes a sort of an island, a cultural island, as well as a physical island. Not very well suited for agriculture. So many of the original people of Kutch are pastoral nomads. They practice other than farming. Farming is only just for bare sustainability. So when I first came to India and to Kutch in 1970, I was struck immediately by the Rabaris. I saw a very intriguing, a very compelling contrast between these women who were looking so capable and severe, wearing black and making these wild ebullient embroideries. And I thought, there's a story here and I need to know more. So that got me going. And so from 1970 all the way up till, I guess, 1983, 84, 85, I worked with Rabari, studying their embroidery and trying to understand it within a cultural context. And I understood embroidery as a form of identity, an expression of identity, also a form of communication without words. People like Himiben and Harkuben in these two photographs were my teachers. So the language of a tradition, I make a distinction between traditional craft and craft per se as practiced as today commercial livelihood. Traditional craft, tradition, the language of tradition is culture. And for example, here a Rabari example, Rabaris being pastoral nomads kept sheep as well as camels or cattle, whatever was viable in the context where they lived. And they would spin their own wool of their sheep. And within their villages, weavers also lived, and they lived very closely and symbiotically. So they would give their spun wool to weavers who wove it, and then the weavers would give it to Kutris who dyed it, their traditional dyers. And so it's a whole network of people that have relationships that are based on working together, but also social. It's not purely economic or transactional. And we could see those traditional clients as a sort of a market, but an intimately. Okay. So after having done my research on Rabaris, I did my degrees. I got 2 master's degrees. And then I became a curator at the Textile Museum in Washington, D.C., which was the most fabulous job in the world. But while I was at the museum, I also got a Fulbright grant. And the museum very generously let me go to India for almost a year to work on my Fulbright grant. I think it's actually over. And I decided
recognizing my earphones. I think this
research.
what has been
There's some people who are not muted. Sorry.
Can everybody mute yourself?
Anyway, I will talk over. So I was studying Suf embroidery as to see if my theory that I had developed working with Rabaris is that embroidery tells the history, otherwise perhaps unwritten, of a community. So I thought, can we do that with Suf embroidery as well? So I was studying the Maro Megwals and the Soda Rajputs who had migrated from Sindh into Kutch and also parts of Rajasthan in 1972 after the 1971 Indo-Pakistan War. So I found that, yes, indeed, embroidery is an expression of cultural heritage that tells a history. But I also learned that craft traditions have a lot more meaning than just finely executed skills. And that, I think, therein lies the real value of craft traditions. So while I was studying Suf embroidery in the village Sumrasar, a young woman, Daya Ben, who is here in the photograph on the right wearing the parrot green, she looked up and she said to me, "Why are you studying us? Why don't you help us?" And it was like an epiphany to me. I had to answer her. I heard her. I had to answer. I said, "Well, why am I studying you? You know, we're not subjects. We're people." That was the first epiphany for me. And I thought, well, I'm studying to preserve your craft traditions because I saw the commercialization was coming very quickly. And then I thought, well, maybe there's another way, because Daya Ben wanted to practice her tradition, but she also wanted to earn. So I understood that commercial craft and traditional craft need not be in opposition. What if we enable artisans to practice their tradition and earn? That was the idea behind Kala Raksha. So being from a museum background, one of the first things I did was establish a museum at Kala Raksha. And I invited the artisans in the who were working with Kala Raksha, the members, to look at their traditions, the older pieces in the museum, and innovate upon them. And they were wonderful. They happily and very creatively were able to do that. As part of the museum, we put together also an interpretation center. And Hariaben on the left, wearing the yellow, was my partner in developing the interpretation center. So we were putting together a display. And we had mannequins that were actually life-size dolls, traditional dolls that the Maro Megwals make. And we had old pieces that had been preserved. We had blouses and the kabjo, the vest that goes over the blouse. And that's it. And Hariaben said, well, when we dress these dolls, what do we use for the lower part? So I said, traditional. And she looked at me and she said, which tradition? And from that, I understood that she saw tradition as a continuum, as not static at all, but always evolving. And so this is how I was learning from artisans that I worked with throughout this time. Kala Raksha was doing amazing work from the time of founding in 1993 until 2001, when, as many of you may remember, there was a horrendous, huge earthquake in, the epicenter was in Kutch, and it devastated the region. Amazingly, none of the Kala Raksha artisans perished in that earthquake, but there was a lot of destruction. So we began to raise funds. It seemed easy to me in this context of an earthquake. And we started the Stone Soup Project, which is from an old children's tale that I knew from my childhood. And we had matching grants so that every woman who worked with Kala Raksha would earn double for 1 year. Now, during this time, sometimes out of difficulties come opportunities. During this time, someone asked me to have some of the Kala Raksha artisans make narrative work. And I said, no, we don't do that. That's not traditional. Women make patchwork with squares and triangles and rectangles, but they don't do narrative work. And then someone else asked me to do narrative work. So I said, okay, all right, we'll do it. And I asked Rani Ben Bika, who had lost her home in the earthquake, to make a floor-to-ceiling sized work depicting her experience of the earthquake. And this is what she made. And I found it extremely powerful, and I thought, what am I doing? I am restricting people, you know, rather than decide what people are capable of, you give them opportunity and see what they can do. And so that was another great epiphany for me. One more wonderful opportunity came out of the earthquake. There were many, many funding agencies coming into Kutch, and I must have been thinking, because we had young design students come from institutes like the National Institute of Design, the National Institute of Fashion Technology. They would come and do internships at Kala Raksha. And I saw that for the most part, they were not optimum relationships between those young designers and artisans. So I kept thinking and probably saying out loud, there should be a design school for artisans. What is it that designers know that artisans don't know? And so someone overheard me and said, please apply for an Ashoka Fellowship. And so I did. And I was very fortunate in 2003 to receive an Ashoka Fellowship to develop the first program of design education for artisans. Now, let me back up a little bit. On the lower left of this screen, you see two embroideries. This, you know, during all of my research of Rabari and then Suf and Karak and Paco embroidery traditions, I saw that women were extremely creative and they were able to essentially follow a design brief. Here are two examples. Rabari women were having a dilemma because they needed to earn money, and whether they did it through embroidering or cleaning houses or working in fields, whatever they did took away their time from embroidering for themselves. So they had less time to do their embroidery. At the same time, the demands for making embroidery for dowries and festivals were increasing. So they were squeezed. So they came up with extremely creative solutions. On the right-hand side, you'll see the Kachi Rabari subgroup solution. And if I didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't notice. It's partly machine embroidered and partly hand embroidered, very intelligent. So the outlines are done with machine embroidery, and then the details are done with hand embroidery, cutting the time it takes to embroider in half. Very intelligent, right? And then the Deber Rabari on the left is another solution to a more extreme problem where the elders of the community, the Knot, banned embroidery altogether because they said women were spending too much time on it. So they came up with the idea of imitating embroidery with ready-made elements like ribbon and rickrack stitched on with a sewing machine. So both of these are excellent examples of design thinking, right? So I said, artisans know design, but they don't know that they know design. So what I developed, I call the psychiatric method, where you teach people to know what they already know. Here, we're having our first meeting to talk. I thought, okay, I have a good idea. Make a design school for artisans. What about the people who are going to come to it? What do they think? So I, here with a friend of mine, Sangeeta Shroff, we're talking to some of the Kala Raksha artisans and asking them, do you want to study? They said, yes. I said, that's good. Okay, what would you like to study? And Tarla Ben, who's the third from the right, young girl, she said, well, look, don't teach us embroidery, because embroidery is what we do. Now you might think, of course, why would one do that? But most of the well-meant schemes conducted by government and NGOs do exactly that. They teach weavers to weave and embroiderers to embroider, and artisans know it's a waste of time, but in that power dynamic, they can't say anything. They just go, okay. So I thought we're on a good track. And then Hariaben, the same Hariaben, who is fifth from the right, sitting there, she's listening in and she's got it. She says, Well, a little bit tongue in cheek, she says, we might not know so many designs, but if we learn to make our own designs, we won't have to rely on anybody else. So I said, okay, I think we can do this. So from 2003 until 2005, I developed a curriculum for teaching design education, teaching design to artisans, and I'll go into that in the next slide. And then we built a campus, and it was designed by Hemant Sangui, a brilliant architect who uses traditional methods and designs. And I think the medium is the method. What it says is tradition can be contemporary and it can be beautiful. So the curriculum is modular. I thought, okay, we have design schools in India, but they're not accessible to artisans. Why? Because of time. Artisans don't have the luxury of being away from their work for 3 to 5 years. Because of money, that's self-explanatory. Because of medium of instruction, almost always English, and because of culture. Even English, language aside, if any of these artisans would go to an institute like NID, they wouldn't be very comfortable there because of cultural differences. So I said, we'll teach within the local culture using local language, Gujarati preferably, if not then Hindi, and we will make the course modular so that I thought 2 weeks is about the time that an artisan who's really practicing can be away from home. 2-week, very intensive modules in which the faculty and the students live together on campus. They share during hours and off hours, and spread that course over a year like drip irrigation. In between, the artisans do homework and the local faculty come to check it. So they're always thinking, there's a continuum. It isn't a break over the year. And also the method of teaching as practical and hands-on as possible. Minimal lecturing, goes straight into the media of the respective media of the artisans who take the course. The course is only open to working traditional artisans. And so you're applying color, for example, learning from the color wheel, but applying it into weaving or dyeing or embroidery. Okay, so I think, yeah, that's enough about the curriculum. The first part of the course looks at what are elements and principles of design, okay, and how can one vary them. And then the two main sources of inspiration throughout are nature, which is the best inspiration, and heritage, looking back at one's own traditions and understanding that actually all of these elements and principles of design were already there. And that helps artisans to value their own traditions and preserve them. We teach innovation, not copying. And I think overall the idea was really to reimagine those traditional systems in an appropriate contemporary form. We had master artisan advisors such as the late Ali Mohammed Isha sitting here, come to talk to artisan students about their traditions, because I think by the time this course began in 2005, already commercial production had been so much a part of crafts in Kutch that the young people sometimes didn't know that much about their traditions. They knew the techniques, but they didn't know what I consider the most valuable parts, the expressions, the cultural expressions, the connections to traditional clients, and so on. The second part of the course looks at connecting to contemporary worlds. Why are we doing these innovations in the first place? For whom? And there's a course, market orientation, not marketing, but market orientation, where students go to Ahmedabad or Mumbai and see what is being sold, see who is using their their crafts and begin to understand, because traditionally the artisans and their clients were very closely connected. Now that the markets have moved farther away, we need to reestablish those connections. Here we have, then we have concept development, collection development, and presentation. Here is Aziz Bai at the International Folk Art Market in Santa Fe, connecting with international clients. And then every year, the course ends in a convocation, which includes a fashion show, a very beloved event. But it's also important because local communities get to see that craft can be contemporary, just like the campus, and it can be fashionable. Okay, I directed Kala Raksha Vidhyalaya for 8 years, and then it was clear to me that it had reached its capacity within that context of being run by a village, a local NGO. And also we had a very unfortunate situation in that the school was surrounded by Asia's largest coal-fed thermal power plant with one of equal size right next door. So it was no longer an appropriate place to be. And at the same time, I came into contact with the KJ Somaya Trust, and together we reinvented the program as Somaya Kala Vidya, and it's still operating as Somaya Kala Vidya in Kutch today. When that was a very delicate transition, I realized that we had in 8 years developed a lot, and the most important asset for, in my opinion, was that experience and the artisan graduates. So I wanted to make sure that we retained that connection and moved it forward rather than starting over. So the first thing as Somaya Kala Vidya that I did was to develop a graduate, or I think in India you say postgraduate course in business and management for artisans, in which the graduates from Kala Raksha Vidhyalaya could be students. And that was a very important course because it really was a graduate course. It was at a much more intense level. And part of that program, I think the key part is for the students to design and implement their own pop-up exhibition. And that really showed the importance of ownership. It's one thing to participate in someone else's exhibition, but to develop your own really creates a sense of ownership, which is so important in becoming an independent artisan designer. At the same time, we had limitations. Originally, there was not a campus for Somaya Kala Vidya, just a small guest house with a beautiful garden. And we operated there for 6 years. And one dilemma was what to do about the convocation and fashion show, which was everybody's favorite event of the year. So I went to some of the graduates in Bujodi village, nearby to Bhuj, and I asked them if they would host for us. And that was a learning for me because I saw that when you ask for help, you develop community. And so they became very invested in helping to present that convocation. By now, the learning through all of this was so important that I felt that it needed to be shared. And I had a serendipitous opportunity to go to Bagalkot to look at starting a project there. And I found out that the reason was because of ilkal sari weaving. So I said, I'm going to take a weaver with me because I'm not a weaver. So Jenti Bai, who was a graduate in 2010, and I went to Bagalkot to sort of do a recce. And we found that the situation of weavers there was pretty dire. And so we started we talked to them, and they were not ready consider any kind of innovation. And Jentibai said to me, what's wrong with these people? And I said, I don't know, what should we do? And he said, let's bring them to Kutch. And it was a brilliant idea, so I have to attribute that to Jentibai. So we brought 5 weavers who were ready to try something to Kutch, and that began the first outreach project in which graduates of the program work with artisans in less exposed regions to sort of kickstart an understanding of the value of design, the importance of design. And I'm happy to say that Somaya Kala Vidya now runs a branch of the school in Bagalkot, and it's doing very well. Also, to share some of our experience, I started workshops, there are a lot of visitors that come to Kutch, but they don't usually get beyond the usual 3 or 4 artisans. So I thought we should share those opportunities so that graduates, artisan design graduates, get to know other potential clients, and those clients get to know that there's a whole world full of artisan designers. So we share through workshops and then open studio tours that are designed and managed by artisan designer graduates. I also realized that, as anybody who's gone through an education program will recognize, you can think creatively and experiment while you're studying, but once you get out in the world, there's a lot of pressure to perform and to produce. And so it's important to have opportunities to continue education. So with every jury, I put together a seminar looking at some of the issues with which artisans and artisan designers grapple. And here's the first one. And the question here being, we can't see the panel of experts here, of jury members and artisans. But the question is, who wants their children to be artisans? And we have quite a few hands raised. I also started a co-design program with my colleague Jenny Angus at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, long distance using WhatsApp, where design students in the US work through WhatsApp with the artisan design graduates in Kutch to co-design products. Okay, what's the impact? The impact has been beyond my imagination, actually. I mean, first of all of the students who have gone through the program have increased their creative capacity, and also, I think, their confidence and self-esteem. That's an important byproduct of good education. Increased their income too. That's everybody's favorite way of measuring impact. And also higher level opportunities. Artisan graduates, artisan designers participated in the LACME Fashion Week in 2017, and then again more recently. So there's some recognition of their capability as designers, as not just workers. And I think what I've seen is that as traditions diversify, one of the important goals was, if everyone's producing the same thing, there's definitely going to be competition. But if each artisan designer has their own style, their own sort of fingerprint in the tradition, then everybody can win, right? A customer can buy from any and all of them, not just one. And so I have seen that as traditions diversify, the market actually expands. And finally, most important, is that young people of the community return to craft. They see it now as viable. It used to be a last resort. Now it's a very good opportunity. International recognition has also been important. A number of artisan designers' work was represented in the V&A Museum UK exhibition, Fabric of India. We've had also outreach projects, co-design projects in Oaxaca, Mexico. Two different artisans, Dayabai and Zakia Ben, were able to travel to Peru for an international gathering of artisans, and quite a few, I don't even know how many artisan designers have had the opportunity to participate in the International Folk Art Market in Santa Fe. Going back to my book, Artisans by Design, the latter part of the book I devote to profiles of different artisan designers through which we understand some of the persistent challenges. Although there has been tremendous success, there are always challenges. Bharatbhai Jaipar, who is a weaver, his challenge is starting up. How does a recent graduate, an artisan designer, break into the better markets when it's already so competitive? And I think Bharatbhai has done an excellent job of that. He graduated in 2019 during the pandemic, and he was able to go straight to social media as a means of building a clientele. Very successful. Soyabhai, who is an Ajrak hand-block print natural dye artist, his challenge is scale. He took the BMA course, Business and Management for Artisans, because he wanted to build his business. And he has done so much that he hardly has time to do creative work. So I think artists all over the world have to define how much they want to scale and how they can manage to incorporate time and space for creative work as well as production work. Dayabai, who is a senior weaver and has been on the faculty of both Kala Raksha Vidhyalaya and Somaya Kala Vidya. His challenge is balancing social and professional. Most artisans live in traditional villages in which there's a strong pull for the status quo. So how does one become successful and still maintain those very important social relations? And I think Dayabai has done an excellent job in balancing that. Success management. Sajanuben Rabari, her challenge is the challenge of women all over the world, how to balance home and work, because everywhere I think women's first priority has to be the home and the family. And yet Sajanuben wanted to have a business, and she has succeeded in spite of being in a small village in a small corner of Kutch and being illiterate. She has leaned on her son and daughter-in-law, and she has her own Instagram account. You can look her up, Sajanuben Rabari, quite active, and has built a business in which she actually can hire other members of her community to work with her. Adilbai and Zakia Ben, who took the course independently, women's class and men's class in 2013, but found each other, fell in love, and now as a married couple, they work together, both Bandhani artists. And I think another goal of the program is to innovate within tradition, to remember what your tradition is and still make your mark. And I think that's what all designers do. Suppose someone joins the House of Dior. They want to make a mark, but they also have to continue the House of Dior. So Zakia Ben and Adilbai have made a collection of vintage pieces from which they draw inspiration, and yet they have different styles. So each of the artisans who are in my book made new work for the book. In the center is Adilbai's collection, and on the right is Zakia Ben's. And I think they're drawing from the same tradition, and yet each one has their own interpretation. Similarly, Pachanbai is drawing from his tradition of weaving dabla blankets for Rabari elders. You can see the sort of layout the concentration of extra weft motifs, which is the specialty of weaving in Kutch, are on the side borders and the bottom borders. And Pachanbai has taken that same format, but taken it to a new level by, instead of using simple geometric repeats, he is doing narrative motifs with that extra weft technique. And here's Prakash Bai, who is a carpet weaver, and he has taken inspiration from other textiles of his tradition and turned them into carpets. On the left is my favorite. It's an interpretation of the desert of Kutch, and he has actually taught himself pile weaving, which is not a part of tradition in Kutch, but looking at YouTube, we're in the modern world. And he's using it the same way the extra weft is used to create patterns, but 3D. Okay, Akib Bai, who's also an Ajrak artisan designer, his challenge is finding the right niche. I think we tend to assume that fashion is where craft needs to go. And I question that because, for example, in that 2017 Lakme Fashion Week, here's Akib Bai's beautiful sari kind of overwhelmed by the funky blouse that the stylist felt was needed to make it contemporary. So what Akib Bai likes to do is these large-scale Islamic geometric, highly technical compositions. So is fashion really the right niche for him? Can we think of other, maybe more appropriate niches? Let's try to think out of the box. The current need, I believe, is to think about the market and to reinvent that aspect of craft traditions. Traditionally, artisans and their clients live together. There's Irfan Bai and his client feeling very comfortable knowing each other. And I think the most important thing is that the traditional clients and artisans shared the same understanding and criteria for evaluation. So the creating process was very satisfying for both the artisan and the consumer. And I think we need to think how to reinvent that. So here we are in 2022, having a discussion with a group of artisan design graduates. And at this time, when I came to do photography for the book, I met with Mukhtar Bai, who was at the time the faculty at Kala Vidya. And his brother won the National Award for Craftsmanship, and I happened to be there when the piece came back. It was a Bandhani piece, fantastic. And I said, this is amazing. You're going to produce it now, aren't you? And he said, no. And I was shocked. I said, why not? He said, it's not worth it. And I think that kind of sums up really what the biggest challenge is. How do we make excellent craft worth it? Because artisan designers can all do it, but will they? Only if they feel it's worth it. And that is on us as consumers. That's where we need to make some efforts. So finally, I think joy is a lot of part of that, making it worth it. And this is Shakil Bai, a batik artist. Batik is printed in Kutch. And Shakil Bai maintains a special table for himself. No one else can use it. It's often empty because he's busy with production. But sometimes he just has to create. And it's because that satisfaction, that joy. And as Ismail Bai, who has been an advisor to the program from day one. He's a master Ajrak printer. He's doing exquisite replicas of traditional textiles. And I said to him, Ismail Bai, this is the quality we want. How do we ensure we get this quality? And he said, you make it with love. And that's it. You make it with love and use it with love. Thank you. So, any questions?
Yeah, I think we have a question from Arzu Mistry.
The complete intense interest everyone has shown. Thanks, Judy. I'm sure you all are ready with the questions. Judy, I can't tell you, every sentence was like a gem for nature as inspiration and building a community. I think it's time for sustainability and sustainability experts and environmentalists all over India to also build a community, like you build a community of artisans. That's an excellent idea. And everyone, now the floor is open for questions. Keep an eye on that little this little aspect which I had started with saying, how is sustainability linked to Judy's work? So keep that in mind. And meanwhile, of course, you can ask other questions also. We'll end with solving that mystery. Yeah, so over to you, the audience. Any questions for Judy? Arzu?
Judy, thank you so much for sharing. I've read a lot of your work over the years, and it's a pleasure to hear you speak. You know, you started with that image of the Rabaris, the Vankars, and the Khatris, and you spoke people in Kutch. That network that was there is spoken about with such value, and as you talk about the evolution and particularly the push of the market, networks, local networks kind of start to fracture in response to the market. And I'm curious, you said a little bit when you're talking about young artisans, but I'm curious in your view, what are the new local networks? And I say local because I understand that there are new networks in, say, the Santa Fe, market and things like that. But I'm wondering if there is still potential for local networks as craft becomes so global, or the markets become so global. I'm curious about that. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of potential. I think, ultimately we're talking about creating value. Artisan designers can create new designs, but is the value of that new design recognized? Or are people still looking at just the stitches of the embroidery or the warp and weft of the fabric? Can we understand the design and value it? So I think when you have one or two people operating independently, that is not as visible. I think if artisan designers can come together and show their work as a collective, perhaps, that can help to create value. As far as consumers, I think we have to work on changing how consumers see craft, right? And making that connection. Can a consumer know the difference between Dayabai's work and Pachanbai's work, right? And learn to value it. I would like to see, maybe I'm getting off your question, but what I would like to see is buy better, buy less. Have work that you're never going to throw away. I always ask people, what's in your closet that you'll never throw away? I used to give them like 10 minutes. You don't need to give them 10 minutes. They all know. And it's always something that has meaning. Okay. So if it has meaning and also value, we can have fewer items in our closet, and the artisans can work at a little more reasonable pace rather than cranking out thousands of meters of ajrak, in a month. I hope I answered it, but I think I diverted. Oh, you're muted now. Wait, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I think the point about value is seems spot on. I loved the image that you showed of, I think you said it, Dayalal at the Santa Fe market, and one of the Khatris with their kind of, their consumer, right, sitting right next to them. And I think that relationship between consumer and artisan is not there anymore, but through social media, there is that potential, right, to be able to develop those relationships with a certain artisan. So I guess part of what I'm thinking about is, what are those ways to continue those relationships between consumers and makers, and even maker networks. The network that you showed was a maker network, and they were consumers also. They were consumers and makers. And so thinking about those networks, that was where my question
I think
was.
what you said about social media is important, because I have heard artisan designers say they don't like to go to the pop-up exhibitions anymore. And I was rather taken aback. And they said, it's because, we go there and people try to bargain us. Unfortunately in India, many times when you see the artisan standing there, it's not, wow, I get to buy from the artisan. It's, oh, I have an opportunity to bargain. And that's hurtful. It wears you down. And so on social media, the same artisan said to me, I like to sell on social media because nobody bargains. And you get to see, this is so-and-so's work and this is so-and-so's work and this is the price. So maybe we have to look at, I still think that, craft should be felt, right? But social media has an important part to play.
Thank you.
The next question from Srilata.
Very good evening. I have two very different questions. One is related to marketing for, so I'm basically connected with a lot of NGOs across the country, and I help them market their eco-friendly products. So basically being an environmentalist, the idea was to have a one-stop shop. So that's one question. The second is related to education. I really love the way you all detail things. You really go into the depth. And somewhere we are missing that completely. Now I am involved with a lot of the CEP now under the new NEP policy. The colleges are supposed to do something called a community engagement project. I'm involved with 3 colleges for the last 4 years, and I'm precisely working on, the way you beautifully design things from your learnings. So that's exactly what I was doing. The first year I went from pillar to post trying to organize everything under the sun and give them the best of best experiences, that they should really engage with the community. Cutting the story short, this year I've tried to juggle something and try to make an automated program where I just sit back and I say that these are second year students, please go ahead, do the stuff. I've given them 5 projects. They have to pick up any 2 and they have to do it. It is quite promising. But how do I ensure quality here?
I think quality, it's like what Ishnelbhai said, make it with love and use it with love. Quality comes when there's a sense of ownership, that this is my work and my name is connected to my work. If there's a disengagement, if it's like I'm making this for some, shop or something and my name will never come on it, what incentive is there to do excellent work, right? You do the minimum.
Right.
And I think as far as education also, like a lot of people think that artisans are not open, they're rigid. And I always tell them that's because of how you're presenting. If you say, make this, you say that to a creative person, that creative person is not going to be very motivated. But if you say, I need something that will hold, a bunch of pencils and, give them, a problem to solve, they go,
yes,
okay, I got it. Then there's some excitement about it, some ownership.
Absolutely. As far as the marketing is concerned, I'm like having every day, I'm having new NGOs knocking at my door, saying that, we are ready to even make what you can market. That's not the idea. I really don't want them to make what I can market. I want them to make what they make, and I want to market what they make. Of course, we have $1 million question of the pricing. And that's where I wanted to ask you if this thing will work. I'm thinking of a new strategy of renting stuff rather than out straight buying it. So we have all this amazing folk stuff that we have, all these embroidery. I have zero clue of design. Okay, for me, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. For me, everything is beautiful. And whatever they make is ultimately beautiful because it's the cause that's associated with it. But when people buy, they look at it from various angles. So the costing and all, of course, comes to a big question mark. I don't know if I have to still survey, pilot, and all this. But do you think this rent thing will work?
I don't really understand what you
So
mean.
basically, when we're looking at all this exclusive paintings, embroideries, and stuff like that, if we look at home office decor, if we look at interiors in the hospitality industry or all that, and we don't ask them to buy, we ask them that, you come on board with us every 3 months, we will change stuff for you. So you just rent it.
The end user will rent from you or from the
Yes.
artisan?
For me, because then I will give them a diverse, they can definitely in the long run, because then they'll have to, logistically it becomes a nightmare for them. They have to, connect with so many. They have one umbrella. So where you will get Madhubani, Kutch, you will get Varli, you will get whatever. So lot of stuff across. And they get a lot of variety without needing to buy it.
Yeah, so the onus is on you. Suppose
Right.
it's going to deteriorate, so it'll have a limit to how many times you can rent it out.
Right. Absolutely. So I really have to look. But then I just am looking at a very different marketing strategy here. So
That's worth a
will
try.
that work? Will that work?
I'll keep an eye on it if you.
No, I'll get back to you on this. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, insight. Yeah.
Next question from Sophie.
Sophie, hi, Sophie.
Ask away, Sophie, ask away.
You're on mute.
Unmute.
Can you unmute her or she needs to do it?
Sophie, you'll have to unmute.
Sophie, can you unmute?
We can't hear you. You'll have to unmute yourself.
You can't do it like this? No.
Sophie, we can't hear.
Bhagesh.
Bhagesh?
Unmute.
Yeah.
See?
Could you try if you can unmute?
Yeah, I tried that, but no, I cannot unmute her. The
Oh.
person will need to
Anjana,
unmute.
you go till she figures out.
Okay. Sure. Hi, Judy. That was a really wonderful. It's really wonderful what you're doing with the Kutchi artisans, and I've actually been to Bujori a few times, and I've interacted with the artisans there. They even made me try weaving. I was very nervous because I was scared I'll get the patterns wrong. They were already working on some patterns, but yeah. The question I had for you is related to climate change and how, in your interactions with the artisans, how do you think that has impacted them? Kutch has an extreme weather, and considering the severe weather, climate, and also the gendered impacts of climate change as well, how do you think it's affecting the artisan community? And if there is a way to work around and help them?
It definitely, I mean, water is the key issue, right?
Yeah.
And the demand for ajrak, for example,
Yeah.
has it makes it very difficult because so much water is involved. I know that the community in Ajrakpur has been working really hard on effluent treatment, but it's sort of a drop in the bucket, if you will, you know, with the issue of how much water is consumed. To me, again, the reason that so much ajrak is produced is because it's sold too cheap. In order to make ends meet, one has to produce more. If the price is low. So if somehow the value could be raised, and you know, the quality of life as well as the environment would be improved, I think. It's a big challenge. That's one thing. Generally, you know, I think craft doesn't waste.
Yeah.
When,
This traditional
you know,
craft.
when I was working with Kala Raksha, people would come wanting to do sustainable fashion. In my opinion, sustainable fashion is an oxymoron. There is no such thing. But, you know, you want to recycle. Okay, they would come and say, we want to use the waste, but there wasn't any waste because artisans come from a value system in which they value the materials they work with, so they don't waste them. They always find, you know, a way to use them. And we should learn from that, right? It's only because of the pressure, say in Ajrakpur, doing so many meters of ajrak, then still I think there's minimal wastage as compared to any kind of industry. But there is, you know, a pressure to not prioritize that sustainable aspect when you're trying to produce in quantity. But yes, I mean, definitely there's an impact on artisans as well as everyone.
And how can this be resolved working together with the artisans to
Again, I think it's about
minimize the
value. That's the thing that comes to my mind quickly.
I think it
No,
makes
I
sense.
don't
Yeah,
think
yeah.
artisans are the main culprits in.
No, they aren't. Yeah, they're actually the vulnerable communities who get impacted by climate change. So
Right,
yeah.
right. So I guess making their clientele, who maybe are more of the culprits, aware.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you so much. Sophie, are you back?
Muted? Can you unmute, Sophie?
Sophie, can you unmute?
I think did you hear? No?
No, she's still unmuted.
Yeah, she's still on mute.
Okay.
Would it be possible to type the question on chat, Sophie?
I sent her a message. 1 minute, could you mute over there?
Me?
So I think, so it's.
On or not?
Hi.
Am I on now?
Sophie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love Judy and I love her work and I love all the women who work with her and how she makes them work and how they make beautiful designs. I am very proud of the fact that maybe I have motivated her to make the beautiful games that she makes. They are a real attraction. Sapsiri, Pachisi, and one made by a grandmother, the Pachisi, and I told her, you're not to make it for anybody else. And she said, yes, nahi banao for anybody. And it's a Pachisi actually. In Vagane Bakri, that's one game she has made from the materials that are found around her, whatever. That's the material, the Kutch material. So that's that. And then Navakankadi, the names are very Gujaratish, of course, but in real fact, it is 9 men's Morris, and there's a story behind that. So Judy has expanded her work to making just not the shawls and the cushion covers and bags and all sorts of things, the carpets as well, but games. No one ever thought that we'll have a game made of cloth and embroidered and decorated with mirror work and lots of things. And they are quite an attraction when I take them abroad. I don't think I like to say anything more.
That's an example of not doing fashion, but doing something
Yeah.
that people will keep for a long time, right? It won't go out of fashion.
Yeah.
Just
I liked what Srilata Menon said.
so thanks, Sophie. It's wonderful that you really
Come
reminded
when
us.
my center
of
is
things.
ready,
And guys,
Jangiri.
before we end, just quick thoughts. Literally, we have a few minutes left. Just some quick
Okay.
thoughts about how
Okay.
this is connected to sustainability. Any thoughts, anything
on.
that comes to your mind?
About sustainability.
You can just.
Let
I
somebody
have a
else-
question.
Let somebody
I
take
have a,
over. Let somebody else
I-
take over. Kailash.
Katie, hi. Can I speak?
Speak.
Yeah. So in the era of climate change, since you mentioned, these communities are nomads, and there are camels and sheep. So I myself come from a nomadic tribe community who we rear, sheep and. So I wanted to understand, like, in the how resilient are they in the era of climate change? Like, the rainfall patterns are changing, grazing lands are shrinking. There are a lot of uncertainties in coming up. How resilient are these communities today? And do you think in from this angle, like, craft can or preserving crafts can make them more resilient, or survivors in this situation, and how sustainable it is?
I think, when you're talking about, say, Rabaris or other pastoral nomads who, yes, as the grazing lands shrink and the demand for pastoral products also shrinks, they're already operating with such minimal margins that there's only so much backing into the corner that can happen, right? So producing craft, I was corrected some time ago to not say producing, but say creating, because there's a difference. Okay, so creating craft and being valued for it, that's one way of, now people are participating in a cash economy. It's no longer a barter economy, right? So in order to get cash, craft can be one way, but quite honestly, the situation of valuing craft is that I saw in Kala Raksha, very few women will embroider anymore because they can do almost anything else and earn more. And that is a very sad situation where you can do CSR work for a power plant, or you can clean homes in Bhuj and earn more money than you can doing craft. There's something wrong with that picture, right? Why are we not valuing handcraft more? Did I answer your question?
Yeah. So
Another question.
this craft, or preserving craft, or this skills is not gonna make them more resilient to climate change, or like, reduce their vulnerability towards climate change.
It could, if we
I
can
yeah.
succeed in raising the value of that
Mhm.
craft.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
Answered my question.
So two things, everyone. I've still not got hands showing for any of the sustainability ideas. But meanwhile, just for the sake of taking a photograph, could everybody please put on their, switch on their camera so we can see the faces for a quick snapshot? That's one. And maybe I start with a cue. I see that use nature as the inspiration, as Judy says, to spread the awareness through various creative narratives and through various creative expressions. I'm not limiting it to only the crafts. So that's one idea of where I'm setting the context as to how sustainability is linked to Judy's talk and mission. Like she said clearly, buy better, buy less. We can definitely promote these concepts. Buy better, buy less. We don't have to go in this total mad consumeristic mode where everybody is advertising that you need to keep buying more. So we can put a break there, and that will stop consumerism and resource depletion. So likewise, if you can share ideas, I mean, I have 10 other things to say, but I'll open the floor to others who would like to share their thoughts on the link with Judy's talk and sustainability.
I think that one is the sustainability is cultural sustainability, social sustainability, ecological sustainability, financial sustainability. And I think that one of the big questions that I have is that when market forces are so strong, everything else becomes very, very difficult. So, I think that part of when we think about, and Judy's response to many of the questions has been about value, but that cannot only be financial value, because then that makes it unsustainable for a lot of other reasons. And so I think that it's more questions that I have around sustainability than answers perhaps, or responses, but part of it is just the links between networks, land, social systems and social capital and social relationships, and finance. So it's I think that the markets so outweigh everything else that it becomes really hard to think about sustainability in balance, and that is really a dilemma.
Yes. Arzu, the reason we are having, thanks a lot. That was really, you've taken the entire vast canvas of sustainability. But it's only through such talks, debates, and discussions we are accepting it's a challenge, first of all. And then how do we kind of surmount this complex challenge is what our speakers and we are here for. And it's not totally so completely out of reach. It's just about creating a change or a twist in the story, or about a reverse. I'm sure if we make unfashioning fashionable, it will happen. Yeah. Why can't we do it? Let's change the story. We can do it for sustainability. Can I say something?
Oh, if I can add.
I would like to say that, you can hear me, right? Mm-hmm. That if we think of an alternative to fashion, it's style. So if you look, say that ajrak was made for Maldaris, right? People who lived in the jungles of the northern area, the bunny area of Kutch, and had only 2 ajraks, but they were beautiful. You have only 2 items of clothing, one you're wearing, one you're washing, but they're beautiful. Because you're poor doesn't mean you don't have beautiful things. And you value them, you wear them until they wear out. And it's a style because it tells who you are. If we can think of that, you don't need to change your wardrobe every season, right? And you don't treat craft like Zara, please. It's hurtful,
Don't treat.
But that's a big challenge for all of us if we could start changing that kind of thinking.
And it's so exciting think we have Srilata right there amongst us who's trying to make eco products really, come center stage. So thank you for all those who are part of this debate and discussion. Thank you, Arzu, for raising all the challenging aspects. We need
If
to
I could-
acknowledge those and then move forward. So really wonderful. Thanks, Team CRE. You
If I
are
can,
the
yeah.
forerunners and we will remain as forerunners. Thank you, Judy. It was
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, Judy. Most of all, starting,
Thanks, Judy.
starting the talk. Very